better this production. And there was recent news that Elden Ring got greenlit to be a movie. Director and writer is Alex Garland, who I'm a big fan of. And a spark went in my brain, right? What would I do if I had a chance to write the movie and direct it? I'm not going to specifically go page for page or go really into detail about this movie. I'm just going to do an outline of it using the Save the Cat beat sheet. The first beat is called the opening image. Is Vike sitting on the Elden throne. As the camera zooms in on him, he wakes up and we realize that it's a dream. Now we're introduced to him as a character and we see his ultimate goal to be the Elden Lord. Now we're also introduced to the world, which is called the Lands Between. We see that the main character Vike, and he's living in the barracks of this army called the Golden Army, led by Godfrey. So it's called Godfrey's Golden Army. And as he's walking through the barracks, we see that there's a bunch of suffering, a bunch of destruction. The world's going through it. And we see a bunch of soldiers dying. Medical tents are filled with a bunch of injured soldiers. We see that this is the reason for him being a knight, where he just wants to have a peaceful world, and he's fighting for this dream of him being the Elden Lord and to have this peaceful world that he could live in. Next beat is the setup, where we learn a little bit more about Marika and more lore about Godfrey. Then we're introduced to the Dragon Cult, which is headed by the Dragon Priestess named Priestess Lanciex. And we also introduced that her and Vike are having an affair. That's her favorite soldier. As we're introduced to this, we see that there's a war going on between Godfrey's Golden Army and the Giants. We're put into the center of it as Vike is getting ready for the final battle, and it's all building up to this intense moment, which literally happens right now in the setup. They go fight this war, and is brutal, bloodied, but Vike and the army come out victorious, and they celebrate while the other soldiers are drinking, having a great time. Vike and the priestess Lanciex are in bed. They're having their little late night celebration, and they're speaking about their dreams and what they want after, now that the war is done. But it all comes to a halt. Now we move on to the next beat, the catalyst, when we learn that Godwin has been killed by somebody in what's later known as the Knight of Black Knives. This leads Marika, which she's the queen. She's literally the embodiment of the Elden Ring, to ban all the tarnished, which makes all the demigods in this world, at war for each other, so they could get the great runes. The tarnish, which Vike is, he leaves, right? And now we follow him as he has to say goodbye to his lover, and he has lost his grace, which is like this whole thing, and it's very complicated. All you gotta need to know is that he's going through the Badlands. When you're not in the land betweens, you're in the Badlands, and there's this war going on, and we follow him as he fights in this war. We don't really focus on this war. We just know that he's at war. But Marika shatters the Elden Ring. Many generations have passed. We really don't know how much time has passed, but we just know that there's a call, and now Vike is allowed to go back to his homeland. Instead of thinking that he's going to make a run to be the Elden Lord, no. All he does, he makes his way back to his homeland, the lands between, and he lives in a cabin. Now we move on to the debate, where he's now in the cabin, and he remembers his goal of being the Elden Lord, but years of war have traumatized him, and that stops him from getting this goal. He's scared to fight again. He's just there in the remote, trying to live a peaceful life now that he's given a second chance. And we see this through flashbacks throughout the rest of this story that is told. Now we move on to break into two, where we see Vike living his normal day-to-day life, in this peaceful cabin, and he's just simple living a gardening and stuff like this. And here's a knock on his door, and he opens it, and who is it? One of his old fellow tarnished brothers that he went to war with. He knows them well, and he provides shelter for him at night. They speak about war and how this world needs peace. This little conversation that he has with the tarnished kind of gives him this motivation to seek out his goal, that he was to be the Elden Lord, because he knows how bad this world still is, and he needs a leader. And who else could it be but him? This has always been his dream, and he has to follow his dream. So he gets ready for the journey. The next day, he gives the tarnish the food, everything, and then leaves on his way. And then Vike gets ready. Now we move on to another beat called the B story. Now, before there's some lore that you need to know. To get to the Elden, to be an Elden Lord, you need two great runes to pass this one location where he was before, where his army called the Lindo capital. You need two great runes to get there, and he needs to be two people who have great runes, which are the demigods. And there's other ways that you could get it, but that's the only way that he knows how right now. So as he's trekking to go to Lindo, he makes a bonfire where he meets his finger maiden, which is basically his guide. She's gonna help him reach his goal. We're gonna move on to fun and games, where basically Vike is transported by his finger maiden to the ground table where he meets Gideon, who tells him of a demigod with a great rune. And because he sees his potential in Vike, and he also sees that he's just a good person with great and positive energy to him. Vike fights his way through the lands between, and he finally kills the demigod. After he kills the demigod, he runs into Ronnie, who we find out killed Godwin. And we find a little more lore about that. And we learn that she also had a great rune, but she discarded it somewhere only she knows. And she tells him that if if he does something for her, she will give him the great rune. So now he already has one great rune. He needs two. And she says that if she gets him a weapon that helps her kill something called the two fingers, then she's going to give him his great rune. And he goes, no, of course I'll help you. But the thing is, this weapon is guarded by another demigod called Scourge Radon. When this story is taking place is during the time where Radon has a parade. That means that everyone's gonna want to kill Radon, and he's gonna have his best chance to get this weapon for her. So Vike does, and he goes on his journey to go get the weapon. He gets there to where Radon is at. He barely evades him, almost dying to Radon. He doesn't kill him because it's just too much for him. So he barely evades Radon, almost dying, and he gets the weapon. And then he goes back to Ronnie, and she gives him her gray rune. So now having two gray runes, he makes his way to the mountaintop of giants through a secret path that only he knew because, like I said, he was in the Godwin's army, so he knows all the secret paths to get there. Instead of having to take this lift that everyone takes, but you need this certain medallions or there's certain things to get up to this lift, but he already knows a way to get there, so he doesn't need to be sidetracked. He just makes his way to the mountaintops of giant. We see a flashback that goes into detail how he learned of this path. Now we're here at the midway point, so now we're halfway through the story, and as he's in the mountaintop of giants, he meets this guy named Shabriri, and he tells him that now that you're close to being the Elden Lord, because he's very close now. He has two great runes. All he needs to do is a couple more things, then he becomes the Elden Lord. But Shabriri tells him that in order to do so, you need to sacrifice your finger maiden, and then to continue escalation towards the Elden Lord. But Vike, being the great man that he is, very honest, very ethical, and has a lot of morals and values, he's not going to let that happen. And now we're gonna go to where the bad guys close in. Vike asks him, "How do I stop this from happening? I cannot let this happen." And the Shabriri tells him that you must contain the frenzy flame, which is located under the Liddell capital. Listening to him, Vike does. He does exactly that. He makes his way underground to the Liddell capital. Fights his way through there to the frenzy flame. And we move on to the next beat, which is called "All Is Lost." And as he tries to contain the flame, it's revealed that it was all a trick. He comes out as frenzied fingerprint. It was all a hoax because Shabriri wants the next Elden Lord to bring chaos into this world, which brings to the dark night of the soul. That's the next beat. The frenzied flame has started to drive him crazy. He realizes what is happening and gets dragged into his mind. So picture like Get Out, where the main character, he's falling and he's looking at, he's in his brain, but he can't control himself. But he's looking at what his what his eyes are seeing. He's just stuck there. His body's moving and acting without his consciousness. And he starts seeing that he begins a rampage in the capital of Dell, killing everything and everyone and anything in his sight, which goes into the break into three beat. He watches as he can't control himself, kill and do a bunch of horrible things and rampage through the city's capital. And it ends with him killing his finger maiden. So no matter what he did, his finger maiden has still died, right? He finally kind of controls his body a little bit and gives up. he has become the one thing that he didn't want to be, another source of violence, right? He wanted peace. Now he's only brought violence because of this endeavor and this journey that he's taken upon himself. He's no longer a peacemaker. And then he gets captured, basically. And that brings us into our finale. He is taken to this jail called the Evergal, which is basically like another dimension. You just stuck there forever, and you're forced to fight anybody and everybody that wanders into this jail for all of eternity. The change of dimension changes him from being the frenzy flame fingerprint to just his normal self. Now he has to deal with the consequences of him killing his finger maiden, killing a bunch of people, and becoming who he just didn't want to become. He has to live with this. The thing about it is that he's still at war because a new tarnished comes in there and fights him, and he's just constantly fighting over and over and fighting these people who are trying to become the Elden Lord. But he has to fight them, or else it's either kill or be killed, right? It's an endless loop, and we just constantly see him fighting and fighting. He's winning because he is strong. He was the closest guy to get to the the Elden Lord, But one day, a tarnished enters who stands with confidence, and after a hard battle, Vike loses, and he shows kind of after he loses, he shows a sign of happiness. It's all over now. He closes his eyes and then he wakes up. But he's not in the jail no more. He's outside back in Capital Lindo. But it looks different. It's all sandy, it's broken, it's red. The sky is no longer yellow like it was before. It's not sunshine, it's red, it's blood. And we see him make his way to the capital. And he's walking, he needs to see what's going on. Maybe he could finally become the Elden Lord, right? Now we make our way to the final beat, which is called the final image. Vike makes his way to the throne, only to see that the Tarnish that has defeated him in the Evergal in the jail has now become the Elden Lord. And then we end. As you can see, this story is not a happy one, which I think is one you can only tell in the themes that are already present in the game Elden Ring. I think this story of Vike is perfect for a movie, and I doubt this is how the real movie is gonna go. But this is how I would tell the story if I had the chance. It's bleak, it's dark, it's filled with optimism, but it is a movie that doesn't end happy for our main character, but it goes to show the world, and we get to see lore, and we get to see a lot of what I really loved about the game. But we get to see a devastating tale of someone trying to really hard to fulfill the dreams, just not being able to, which is a great example and embodiment of the game. As you just keep dying over and over and over, and it feels like you're never gonna become the Elden Lord until you finally do in the game. And yeah, Bad Ideas Production.